in the places where you give us good, it almost surely crosses over to unbiblical.
And on top of that, it felt like every time he delivered a line, it was done in such a haphazard, flippant way.
But at the same time, nobody tunes in just to hear a dishonest opinion.
Yeah, there's some disagreement on the
There
person.
is. Say more.
There's some disagreement.
Say more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cook Brothers Podcast. My name's Caleb.
My name's Kyler.
And we're going to be going over the Mary film. So both of us got the chance to watch it last night. You watched it this morning?
Yeah, you just about told a lie. You just about lied to our audience.
I'm saying you watched it this morning. I was very clear that
we started it last night. So you're not so wrong. We started it last night. They're going to know you as a liar.
You fell asleep in the first 10 minutes. Why is that?
I was feeling tired.
Let's talk about it.
It's been a rough week. You're here. We're here.
Let's get started.
I think just in the spirit of trying to encourage, trying to upbuild, trying to uplift, we really don't want this channel to be a slam session. But at the same time, nobody tunes in just to hear a dishonest opinion. And I think that I think there's a larger conversation to have around this about just as Christians. I think the tendency is to feel like either it's our job to just absolutely gush whenever somebody makes something from the Bible, or it's to totally pan it and to act as if it's worth nothing. There's kind of no middle ground. There's no like average C. And so hopefully this is an opportunity on this show for us to be able to talk kind of organically about some of these things and say some true things.
You might disagree with the content. You might disagree with the perspective.
I disagree with some of the content
and some of the perspective.
And some of the perspective.
And I think that a lot of people likely will, because it's unknown and uncharted territory. I mean, it's the story of Mary, and there's just information that we don't exactly have in the canonical Bible.
I'll say this about Mary. Everyone agrees completely with who she is and what that
Jesus,
what that amazing lady was about.
Yep.
You serious?
There's not a disagreement in all of Christianity
on
her as a person.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's some disagreement on the
there
person.
Is. Say more.
Tell me more. Some disagreement.
Say more. I want to know more about this. Let's get in the weeds.
Well, I mean, okay, so first things
first. How could you
first,
disagree?
we got to set some ground rules for this conversation.
Okay.
We don't want to piss everybody off in the Christian sphere. We don't want to upset everyone.
What's going to be the word that happens whenever you say a curse word?
Mamma mia!
Something like...
like a Super Mario.
It's supposed to be like a short noise. Oh man,
It's a me, Mario.
You got me there. I think that's gonna win.
Listen. Okay. I came into this film with an open mind. Also, really impressed by the trailer. We just put out a video about that. If you're interested in that, links in the bio below. I got the chance to watch Mary. You got to watch it this morning. And so we're coming into this fresh. We are Christians. We've been Christians for 2 decades. And so we're coming into this having read our Bibles.
Been following Jesus for a minute.
Just a little bit. And so, obviously, I think you have to go into these kinds of projects being really careful. We go back to the Bible. Anytime that we watch a entertainment piece, it's always important to, number one, look at it as a piece of entertainment. Number two, yes, it is somewhat educational, especially if you're coming into the story of Mary and you've never seen that before. And I think that's going to be a majority of the issue that people are going to have with this film. They're going to come into this and they're going to say, okay, where does, facts end and where does fiction begin?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the thing that we had discussed in our trailer breakdown is that Mary is trending right now on Netflix. It's in the top 10, and in Brazil it's number 1, in Romania it's number 1, and that's great. It's really wonderful. If this is someone's first encounter with the story of Jesus and his birth, it's going to be probably a little bit confusing. And I think partly because the desire was for this to be a $70 million kind of like
Biopic.
a telling of this character, but in a way that's very fantastic, in a way that's very engaging, in a way that has, horse chases. And so
Just so you know, Mary, right now, currently at 7:51 p.m. is number 2 on Netflix.
it's number 2 on Netflix. Ton of people sitting down going, what are we watching tonight? Let's look at the top 10. A lot of people watch based off of the top 10, and Netflix intentionally puts things there. And that's part of the algorithm for them too. They're trying to push this new content. Netflix wants this to be a win. I don't know if you are aware of this. Netflix has struggled with keeping families with traditional perspectives on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple times in the last probably 5 years, a few times, that there's been major waves of people unsubscribing. And so making these movies and engaging with these kinds of audiences is supposed to be a love letter to people with a traditional perspective, to kind of woo them back, to get them back on the platform. They need this to perform well. The question is, did it?
Yeah, I would say, looking at the IMDb, looking at the Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, it is a 5.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes right now has not yet had enough reviews for a critic review, but it's looking like at 50 ratings. It's sitting at a 43% popcorn meter, which means it is certifiably rotten as a film. So,
Now, I want to make this clear. Caleb is not expressing that opinion. That's just what we're seeing on Rotten Tomatoes. And Caleb has an opinion. We all do. Everyone that watched it has an opinion. Caleb, give us your score, 1 through 10.
I give it a 6 out of 10, and that's being significantly generous as a Christian, wanting more Christian content to be produced.
Yeah.
I think if I were to look at this and compare it to some of its counterparts, I could see it getting a lower rating. If I were to compare it to other faith-based films that we've seen in the market over the last couple of years, it would maybe get a higher rating.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of things that this film did really well, and I think that there were several things that this film struggled with, and so we're going to highlight a couple of those things in our discussion here.
Here's the deal.
Yeah, here's the deal.
6 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Man, whenever you approach this content, whenever you get into the Bible, you really got to be careful. And we've seen the likes of Dallas Jenkins go through this. It's a high wire act. You want to impress the people that love Jesus. That's at the core of who they are. People that love the Bible, you want to impress them, but you also want to impress the people that are just tuning in to watch a good movie. And there are certain things in Hollywood. This director's coming out of Hollywood, and so he is aware of what you need to have in a film in order for it to be labeled a successful film. The problem is you can only fit so many things into that container.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes whenever you're trying to sort of force feed the container to be able to make this work in a way that works with the critics and makes lots of money and causes people to want to come back, you can put the wrong things in. And I think this is kind of probably the case with Mary. I think in an attempt to please a lot of different kind of audience groups, what we ended up with is kind of an amalgamation movie. And I think it could have, whenever Mary was great, it was wonderful. That's one thing that I think is super important to note. Whenever it's hitting and whenever it's striking and whenever it's beautiful, it's landing the plane.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are moments that throw you way out of the film. Things that are, just to be fair, unbiblical. Things that are not in the canon of the Bible. To people that love the Bible and love Jesus and love the character of Mary and Joseph, this is a jarring experience for us.
And what I just want to stop you there. There's a difference between unbiblical and extra biblical, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that's the case, right? So if something is extra biblical, it would be something that, like The Chosen, we're seeing these characters formed. We're seeing some of the in-between stories kind of
Thomas
bridging
and
together.
Rhema.
we're creating these characters, we're creating these storylines to help a TV show or a film be made. An unbiblical presentation of a character, I would say, would be one that is a negative presentation that is opposing biblical viewpoints about that character.
I think that's a really helpful discussion to have about the difference between extra biblical and unbiblical. I think extra biblical can be done well. I think it can even be done amazingly in a film on these characters that we know and that we love from the Bible. Unbiblical is where you start to cross into territory where people's convictions might feel a little kind of unsettled, where people start to wonder, wait, what's the goal of this director, or what's the goal of putting this piece out? And so for sure we can get into where the movie kind of trended towards unbiblical as we have this conversation. And again, this is not to poo-poo on Mary, because we want it to do well. A $70 million biblical epic, please, more of that. We need people tuning in. But as you can see from the reception, something missed in the landing here. And so hopeful to be able to discern what that is in a larger conversation.
Yes, I just want to say right off the bat, I love movies that take their time, that lets the characters breathe, invites us into intimacy of those characters, seeing what their life looks like, what they actually went against. I just felt like I was longing for this movie to take a breath, pause, and allow for us to experience the life through some of these characters. The beginning, it just felt like it was so rushed.
Pacing was a problem.
Yeah, we're jumping ahead, through these years, and I just feel like we're starting off with something already that is sort of, an unknown story to many who would say they are Christians. This idea of Mary's father and mother, and the mother character, I didn't feel like was cast super well. I felt like that was a pretty significant distraction to me. At times, she almost looked like she had blonde hair. And that was just kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
The father character mostly spoke without an accent at all, it seemed.
Yeah.
And then Mary has an accent, and the mother doesn't really have an accent. And I found myself just sort of struggling to figure out this cohesive unit. We have the Gabriel that shows up, an excellent use of visual effects, right? But the character of Gabriel, I felt like, was a little odd and off-putting, a little bit of a menacing,
not magnificent in a sense, more just kind of alarming, and sort of, it almost verged on like we were starting to kind of get into horror film.
If you hadn't told me, I would have thought Gabriel was the devil meeting Joseph. And then we find out, okay, it's Gabriel, but then we see Gabriel in the home in the dark and kind of showing up to the mother, Mary's mother. And, the question that I had was like, why is she not scared? Right. Okay. Maybe there's something supernatural that happened, whatever. She goes out and she greets, Mary's father, and she doesn't seem distracted or concerned or anything. And it doesn't feel like they really go back and explain why she would not have been shocked or amazed or, having a difficult time composing herself. And I just felt like that was a huge miss. And we kind of started there as far as things that just felt a little off. And then,
and I think this is a great way to put this. You can have 85% landing, but whenever that 15% is consistently off in a different way, scene by scene, it starts to add up. It starts to feel like 30% and then 35 and then 40%. Yeah. And by the time we get to young Mary, I'm just kind of off kilter. I think what my brother is saying there about some of the pacing, I agree. Some of the pacing felt a little rushed in the beginning is a good way to put it. You have Mary's father going out into the desert. That's extra biblical because we do not know what that experience was like for the parents to know that they were pregnant with Mary. But it's kind of foreshadowing Jesus going into the desert and praying and getting his this experience with God. And you see that all throughout the Bible. Paul has a moment where he goes out into the desert and experiences God as well before he comes back and starts to minister to the Gentiles. And so it's this kind of trope that it's like, is it believable? Sure. And so from that sense, extra biblically, I'm kind of hanging in there. I'm not like thrown off the horse just yet. I'm willing to kind of engage with this. I'm going, okay, that's an artistic decision. So let's see more. Yeah. And this is 20 minutes in.
Yeah, it's a little bit less than that. Then we hit Anthony Hopkins, and I'll be honest, my expectations for him in this film were sky high. Like I had a high
Anthony
bar. I have
Hopkins.
seen his work, and I just felt like, and I mean, maybe you can share, in this. I felt like the scene where he's sitting with his wife at the opposite ends of the table, right? Magnificently blocked, beautiful setting, beautiful costuming. And then we have this scene take place where he takes a knife and ends her life. And he just seems so disconnected from it all. And I understand they're trying to establish that this character is cruel.
Yeah,
he's
he's
cruel.
crazy.
He's end of life. He has nothing really that he is super worried about other than maintaining dominance as a king. But it felt so disconnected that there was no room for you to understand or empathize or even like the character. And on top of that, it felt like every time he delivered a line, it was done in such a haphazard, flippant way. He was throwing the lines away. Nothing was really serious to him. Nobody was worth any value.
Yeah.
And it just feels like the character slips off into a night's sleep. And the performance just did not land for me.
My brother and I refer to acting sometimes as kind of like chemistry, where you're combining all of these different chemicals to be able to create your ultimate desire. And so whenever you have an amazing actor like Anthony, you're looking for the different levels and the different key elements that are coming into play. And it really feels kind of one note. And that is odd for an Anthony Hopkins performance.
You almost wonder if maybe the director was a little intimidated to give him notes.
Could be.
So that's really it. And then with Sir Anthony Hopkins, you just go like, I'm not going to say a word.
Do it.
Yeah.
And you got an actor that's showing up, 86 years old, obviously just an excellent actor.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. As I was
what
watching
do you have
it,
to teach Anthony Hopkins, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure there were several times where he would give a line and I thought it was excellent delivery, but I just wanted something else too, like, some flavor to that, like you're saying, levels to that. I do want to pause here and say the location, the settings, the props, the costuming, the cinematography, all excellent. S tier level. We're seeing a high level of craftsmanship being poured out, and certainly $70 million. I can see where it went. There's no question of should it have cost
even
that
the practical sets that you're seeing. There's a lot put into this to make it look good and to make it look quality. And this is in and of itself what makes filmmaking from a biblical perspective so difficult is that it is a high wire act. You can have 7 out of 8 things and the film isn't received well and people don't resonate. And it is so difficult. Like a lot of people sit back and we kind of armchair quarterback the performances or the director decisions. We don't know what kind of problems we'll run into during the production. I know as sure as I can that you and I have hit some major things during production that can be really difficult, that can set you back or can change the whole story, can change the whole narrative. And so, but at the same time, filmmaking is really advanced problem solving with super high stakes. And so you're solving all the problems. It can't just be lighting, cinematography, blocking, really believable characters. There's writing, there's plot, there's pacing. There's so many things to
you
get
just
right.
have to come in with such a strong screenplay and such a strong script. And I think that's also where this film missed the mark a little bit. We didn't really get the exploration in the right areas of the character. And then the exploration we did get felt like it was added so that we could have a chase scene, so that we could have multiple stabbings.
Interesting.
So that Mary could watch her father die, right? And so, all of those different things I felt, while the director might have thought that was additive, it felt like a distraction from the major story arc, which is Mary experiencing hardship, being supernaturally, sort of imbued with the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
What would that have felt like? And even those interactions, I felt like were somewhat limited.
They were very
and,
quick.
and stilted and a little odd. And,
Like I said, this is not a big poo-poo. The Cook Brothers podcast is not putting down filmmakers. This is unbelievably difficult to accomplish.
Yep.
Our hats are off to DJ Caruso for the attempt. I think ultimately the audience reception tells the true tell. And so maybe this can be an opportunity for us to kind of sort out, okay, what landed and what didn't, and what can we learn from it?
Yeah.
As audience members, as filmmakers, how can we refine our criticisms of the art form?
Yeah.
And maybe that's even kind of one of the things that we're hopeful
Yep.
as kind of like a flag of our podcast is to help people have the tools to be able to understand film better.
Yeah.
And so, I would like to play a game with you, Caleb. If we could, let's think of,
EA Sports. It's in the game.
no, I think that actually gets us copyright strike.
Oh, my
right
bad.
there.
Was it that good?
Oh,
Was the
thank-
impression that good?
I know it wasn't great,
EA Sports.
but I have a feeling that
Ooh, yeah.
much of it,
Let's go, boys.
of
Let's
that
play the game.
that went from NFL to wrestling real quick. So two things that we liked about the movie. One thing that we think could have been improved on.
Sure.
And so give me a couple things that like are your
Yeah.
takeaway.
So you're saying two things that I liked, one thing I thought could have improved.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Number one thing I liked, I felt like Noah Cohen really performed well as the character of Mary. I felt like she brought a lot of life to that character. It felt
Yep.
like she was extremely believable. She had that softness and that smile. You just really wanted her to do well. You
Yeah.
wanted her to be successful. You wanted her to get through those trials. And so as a protagonist, I really felt like that was just unbelievably done.
Yeah.
The second thing I really loved was cinematography was excellent throughout the piece. I felt like the lighting, they hazed out the scenes really well. The sets were incredible. The costuming and wardrobe, they did a great job. For the most part, they had some scenes that I felt like just with color orientation, they could have been more careful to kind of direct the eye towards what was supposed to be focused on in the scene. But
You're really thinking about this, aren't you?
yeah, overall,
I
I felt
noticed
like
that.
I felt like those were great. One of the things that I really struggled with, I just felt like we didn't get the pieces of the story that I would have loved to have been told. I would have loved more insight into what the character was feeling and going through and thinking. We had scenes where we saw her physically show emotion, but we didn't actually get dialogue with other characters that helped give more exposition into the character of Mary.
Yeah.
I felt like I wanted more about, that struggle of bringing, the creator of the universe into the world.
Yeah.
Just kind of get that perspective. And I think probably could have done a little better with the screenplay.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things that I really loved. One, the river scene. That played out. I think it was really cool watching this kind of like God-oriented, this divine interaction where he's leading Joseph to the right place to see Mary and to fall in love. And there's a reason that resonated so well with me, and I think with us, is, as some of you know, we are in the process right now of creating a King David feature film. And in the pre-production side of that, having a lot of fun thinking about not just like the monolithic characters of David and Samuel, but also the small everyday characters and how God's sovereignty and how God orienting these characters to be in the right place at the right time. We're having a lot of fun with that. Almost this kind of like everything's working out just as it should, sort of Doctor Strange moment from Avengers Endgame, where it's only one way that it can happen in order for everything to go right. And I love those moments in faith-based films whenever you see God orienting. And so whenever Joseph is led to Mary, I thought that was a really, really beautiful moment.
I thought the birth scene was great.
Yeah, the birth scene was the other thing that I was going to bring up, is just done very well. The star shining in the sky, it was very earthy and gritty. You feel the pain as Noah Cohen is portraying that as the character of Mary, this sort of visceral. It wouldn't have been sort of beatific. It wouldn't have been this nice, clean baby. It would have been really painful and really hard and in a place that isn't comfortable. And I thought that they nailed that. I thought it was so beautiful. But then that kind of goes into really my main critique of the whole movie. And that is that in the places where you give us good it almost surely crosses over to unbiblical. And so you have this beautiful scene of Mary going through this labor and bringing the Savior of the world into existence. And then really quickly following that, you have this scene where Joseph is sort of ushered in close, and Mary tells Joseph, I'm going to call him Jesus. And we know from the biblical take, as Caleb had just read from Matthew, that Joseph would have known Jesus' name ahead of time from a dream that he had where Gabriel visited him in a dream, or an angel.
I'll go ahead and read that. It's Matthew 1, 18 through 21. Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. And her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly, which I don't feel like they showed that much at all. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son. And then here the angel tells Joseph, and you shall name him Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't come from Mary.
I think really that's, whenever you look at the 5 out of 10 or the 6 out of 10 that this film is getting right now, I think it's because you have this large audience that is excited about faith-based films, excited about this traditional family-based storytelling. And whenever you weave in and out of canon biblical, then extra biblical, then outright unbiblical, then back to canon biblical, it can cause this kind of, what would you say, kind of like weariness in the audience, or kind of skepticism that can happen. It can even cause a sense of something kind of in people's convictions of
Just distrusting.
This
I
feels
don't trust
totally
it.
off. What's it trying to do here? Because this isn't what we read in our Bibles, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think it's like this. The things we see in the Bible that are clear need to be portrayed that way. We need to see it done that way. I don't want to think it would have added any extra time to have had Joseph had a dream.
Right.
And he experiences the same level of connection with this angel.
Yeah.
And he's looking forward to the coming of the Messiah.
Yeah.
Right. And then we could have, I think, all been on board for those moments after the birth, but making it so that Joseph was unaware, and he asks Mary, I think he says, like, what are we going to name him? And Mary says, Jesus, right? So that she's the one naming, as opposed to Joseph.
And it's a small thing. I think, there's some questions that come later in the movie with, there's a house that's burned down, and the guards set fire to everything before they even go to see whether or not Mary and Joseph are inside. It's kind of a confusing blocking decision as well. They narrowly escape.
Well, I really felt like what the director was trying to do was his own version of Inglourious Basterds at the very beginning in the farmhouse, where
Mamma mia!
they've got the Jewish men and women underneath the floorboards, and then they show up as the Nazis, and they're kind of asking, "Are you hiding enemies of the state?" And he gives that slow nod. But what they did was they took that scene in Inglourious it took 20 minutes and they made it a 1-minute scene,
right?
And so there wasn't the level of tension built up, and so it just felt like it was like we were just rushing to get that scene done. And then he just starts lighting things on fire randomly as he's coming into the house, which I wasn't really super I didn't understand that.
And then the couple dies in the house, and that's a situation where it's a major sacrifice that's made for Mary and Joseph to be able to escape. And as she jumps off the roof of the house, which is for what it's worth, maybe that moment didn't feel like
Joseph could have caught her. This is like a Titanic moment. Like Rose could have put Jack on the
wooden door.
On the wooden door.
Yeah.
It feels like Joseph
I don't know,
could have
ladies
opened his arms.
in the chat, ladies, tell me if you were jumping off a roof 3 days after you had any of your babies. I would like to hear from you just to see like how
your man better open his arms.
There's
That's
some
all I gotta
suspension
say.
of disbelief that's required for the end of this. And
my wife would suspend my disbelief.
Yes.
If I told her to
you
jump off
you
of
better catch her. If she's jumping off a roof, you better catch her. So, for what it's worth, the movie ends in a strange way where Mary makes the decision that she wants to go back to the temple from the place that they were just running away from and escaping from. And so they go back, and like the guards, I don't know if it's like God has blinded them, or, you know, Anna's standing there and she's like, come with me to the temple. And so it's a beautiful scene. It's shot beautifully. And this kind of is the main contention that we have with Mary on Netflix. It looks beautiful, but the sensibility behind the scene or the character decisions, it's confusing. Why would Mary, especially, again, this is a moment that isn't biblical, they flee to Egypt. They get out of there.
Out of Dodge.
They aren't coming back to the temple to have a run-in with Herod. They're getting gone, getting tiny so that they can raise Jesus. I thought it would have been cool to be able to see like a toddler Jesus or something, finishing out the film of them kind of living their days quietly, and maybe like, you
Little
know,
Jesus Jr.
yeah, maybe
Little Jesus
Jr. That's definitely unbiblical. What are we talking about, Jesus
Little
Jr.?
Junior Jesus.
No,
Joseph Jr. That's what
Little
you're saying.
Joseph Jr.
Little
Jr. Yeah,
Little Holy Spirit Jr.
bro, you just
Not even
about,
Joseph's Jr.
You just
He's
about
not Joseph
created
Jr.
a cult right there. That was close.
Little Junior Jr.
Junior. That's our thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts. Can you take it down to the comment section right now? We want to see 2 things that you liked about the Netflix movie Mary, and 1 thing that you think it could have improved on.
I'm Caleb,
I'm Kyler.
and this is the Cook Brothers Podcast.
Thank you.